illy deeds or speech, or remain internally as unexpressed thoughts, desires, and emotions. The Buddha distinguishes into two primary ethical types: unwholesome action rooted in mental states of greed, hatred, and delusion, and wholesome action rooted in mental states of generosity or detachment, goodwill, and understanding. The willed actions a person performs in the course of his life may fade from memory without a trace, but once performed they leave subtle imprints on the mind, seeds with the potential to come to fruition in the future when they meet conditions conducive to their ripening. The objective field in which the seeds of ripen is the process of rebirths called samsara. In the Buddha's teaching, life is not viewed as an isolated occurrence beginning spontaneously with birth and ending in utter annihilation at death. Each single life span is seen, rather, as part of an individualized series of lives having no discoverable beginning in time and continuing on as long as the desire for existence stands intact. Rebirth can take place in various realms. There are not only the familiar realms of human beings and animals, but ranged above we meet heavenly worlds of greater happiness, beauty, and power, and ranged below infernal worlds of extreme suffering. The cause for rebirth into these various realms, the Buddha locates in our own willed actions. In its primary role, determines the sphere into which rebirth takes place. Wholesome actions bringing rebirth in higher forms, unwholesome actions rebirth in lower forms. After yielding rebirth, used to operate, governing the endowments and stances of the individual within his given form of existence. Thus, within the human world, previous stores of wholesome will issue in long life, health, wealth, beauty, and success, stores of unwholesome in short life, illness, poverty, ugliness, and failure. Prescriptively, the second level of teaching, found in the Dhammapada, is the practical corollary to this recognition of the law of put forth to show human beings, who naturally desire happiness and freedom from sorrow, the effective means to achieve their objectives. The content of this teaching itself does not differ from that presented at the first level. It is the same set of ethical injunctions for abstaining from evil and for cultivating the good. The difference lies in the perspective from which the injunctions are issued and the aim for the sake of which they are to be taken up. The principles of morality are shown now in their broader cosmic connections as tied to an invisible but all-embracing law which binds together all life and holds sway over the repeated rotations of the cycle of birth and death. The observance of morality is justified, despite its difficulties and apparent failures, by the fact that it is in harmony with that law, that through the efficacy of our willed actions become the chief determinant of our destiny both in this life and in future states of becoming. To follow the ethical law leads upwards, to inner development, to higher rebirths and to richer experiences of happiness and joy. to violate the law, to act in the grip of selfishness and hate, leads downwards, to inner deterioration, to suffering and to rebirth in the worlds of misery. This theme is announced already by the pair of verses which opens the Dhammapada, and reappears in diverse formulations throughout the work. See, e.g., 15-18, 117-122, 127, 132-133, Chapter 22. 3. The ethical counsel based on the desire for higher rebirths and happiness in future lives is not the final teaching of the Buddha, and thus cannot provide the decisive program of personal training commended by the Dhammapada in its own sphere of application. It is perfectly valid as a preparatory or provisional teaching for those whose spiritual faculties are not yet ripe but still require further maturation over a success scion of lives. A deeper, more searching examination, however, reveals that all states of existence in samsara, even the loftiest celestial abodes, are lacking in genuine worth, for they are all inherently impermanent, without any lasting substance, and thus, for those who cling to them, potential bases for suffering. The disciple of mature faculties, sufficiently prepared by previous experience for the Buddha's distinctive expo Citaion of the Dhamma, does not long even for rebirth among the gods, having understood the intrinsic inadequacy of all conditioned things. His focal aspiration is only for deliverance from the ever-repeating round of births. This is the ultimate goal to which the Buddha points as the immediate aim for those of devil-opt faculties, and also as the long-term ideal for those in need of further development, nibbana, the deathless, the unconditioned state where there is no more birth, aging and death, and no more suffering. The third level of teaching found in the Dhammapada sets forth the theoretical framework and practical discipline emerging out of the aspiration for final deliverance. The theoretical framework is provided by the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, 190-192, 273, which the Buddha had proclaimed already in his first sermon and upon which he placed so much stress in his many discourses that all schools of Buddhism have appropriated them as their common foundation. The Four Truths all center around the fact of suffering, dukkha, understood not as mere experienced pain and sorrow, but as the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of every thing conditioned, 202-203. The first truth details the various forms of suffering, birth, old age, sickness and death, the misery of unpleasant encounters and painful separations, the suffering of not obtaining what one wants. It culminates in the declaration that all constituent phenomena of body and mind, the aggregates of existence, khanda, being impermanent and substanceless, are intrinsically unsatisfactory. The second truth points out that the cause of suffering is craving, tanha, the desire for pleasure and existence which drives us through the round of rebirths, bringing in its trail sorrow, anxiety, and despair. 212-216, Chapter 24. The third truth declares that the destruction of craving issues in release from suffering. And the fourth prescribes the means to gain release, the Noble Eightfold Path, right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mind, fullness, and right concentration. Chapter 20. If, at this third level, the doctrinal emphasis shifts from the principles of karma and rebirth to the Four Noble Truths, a corresponding shift in emphasis takes place in the practical sphere as well. The stress now no longer falls on the observation of basic moral ity and the cultivation of wholesome attitudes as a means to higher rebirths. Instead, it falls on the integral development of the Noble Eightfold Path as the means to uproot the craving that nurtures the process of rebirth itself. For practical purposes, the 8 factors of the path are arranged into 3 major groups which reveal more clearly the developmental structure of the training, moral discipline, including right speech, right action and right livelihood, concentration, including right effort, right mindfulness and right concentration, and wisdom, including right understanding and right thought. By the training in morality, the coarsest forms of the mental defilements, those erupting as wholesome deeds and words, are checked and kept under control. By the training in concentration, the mind is made calm, pure and unified, purged of the currents of distractive thoughts. By the training in wisdom, the concentrated beam of attention is focused upon the constituent factors of mind and body to investigate and contemplate their salient characteristics. This wisdom, gradually ripened, climaxes in the understanding that brings complete purification and deliverance of mind. In principle, the practice of the path in all 3 stages is feasible for people in any walk of life. The Buddha taught it to lay people as well as to monks, and many of his lay followers reached high stages of attainment. However, application to the development of the path becomes most fruitful for those who have relinquished all other concerns in order to devote themselves wholeheartedly to spiritual training, to living the holy life, Brahmacharya, for conduct to be completely purified, for sustained contemplation and penetrating wisdom to unfold without impediments. Adoption of a different style of life becomes imperative, one which minimizes distractions and stimulants to craving and orders all activities around the aim of liberation. Thus the Buddha established the Sangha, the order of monks and nuns, as the special field for those ready to dedicate their lives to the practice of his path. And in the Dhammapada, the call to the monastic life resounds throughout. The entryway to the monastic life is an act of radical renunciation. The thoughtful, who have seen the transience and hidden misery of worldly life, break the ties of family and social bonds, abandon their homes and mundane pleasures, and enter upon the state of homelessness. 83, 87-89, 91. Withdrawn to silent and secluded places, they seek out the company of wise instructors, and guided by the rules of the monastic training, devote their energies to a life of meditation. Content with the simplest material requisites, moderate in eating, restrained in their senses, they stir up their energy. Abide in constant mindfulness and still. The restless waves of thoughts, 185, 375. With the mind made clear and steady, they learn to contemplate the arising and falling away of all formations, and experience thereby a delight that transcends all human delights. A joy and happiness that anticipates the bliss of the deathless, 373 to 374. The life of meditative contemplation reaches its peak in the development of insight, vipassana, and the Dhammapada enunciates the principles to be discerned by insight wisdom, that all conditioned things are impermanent, that they are all unsatisfactory, that there is no self or truly existent ego entity to be found in anything whatsoever, 277 to 279. When these truths are penetrated by direct experience, the craving, ignorance and related mental fetters tining bondage break asunder, and the disciple rises through successive stages of realization to the full attainment of Nibbana. 4. The fourth level of teaching in the Dhammapada provides no new disclosure of doctrine or practice, but an acclamation and exaltation of those who have reached the goal. In the Pali Canon, the stages of definite attainment along the way to Nibbana are enumerated as 4. At the first, called stream entry, Sottapatti, the disciple gains his first glimpse of the deathless and enters irreversibly upon the path to liberation, bound to reach the goal in 7 lives at most. This achievement alone, the Dhammapada declares, is greater than lordship over all the worlds, 178. Following stream entry come 2 fur. They are stages which weaken and eradicate still more defilements and bring the goal increasingly closer to view. One is called the stage of once returner, Soka Dagami, when the disciple will return to the human world at most only one more time, the other the stage of non-returner, Anagani, when he will never come back to human existence but will take rebirth in a celestial plane, bound to win final deliverance there. The fourth and final stage is that of the Arahat, the perfected one, the fully accomplished sage who has completed the development of the path, eradicated all defilements and freed himself from bondage to the cycle of rebirths. This is the ideal figure of early Buddhism, and the supreme hero of the Dhammapada. Extolled in Chapter 7 under his own name and in Chapter 26. 385 to 388, 396 to 423, under the name Brahmana, holy man. The Arahat serves as a living demonstration of the truth of the Dhamma, bearing his last body, perfectly at peace. He is the inspiring model who shows in his own person that it is possible to free oneself from the stains of greed, hatred and delusion, to rise above suffering, to win Nibbana in this very life. The Arahat ideal reaches its optimal exemplification in the Buddha, the promulgator and master of the entire teaching. It was the Buddha who without any aid or guidance, rediscovered the ancient path to deliverance and taught it to countless others. His Aries-ing in the world provides the precious opportunity to hear and practice the excellent Dhamma, 182, 194. He is the giver and shower of refuge, 190 to 192. The supreme teacher who depends on nothing but his own self-evolved wisdom, 353. Born a man, the Buddha always remains essentially human. Yet his attainment of perfect enlightenment elevates him to a level far surpassing that of common humanity. All our familiar concepts and modes of knowing fail to circumscribe his nature. He is trackless, of limitless range, free from all worldliness, the conqueror of all, the knower of all, untainted by the world, 179, 180, 353. Always shining in the splendor of his wisdom. The Buddha by his very being confirms the Buddhist faith in human perfectibility, consummates the Dhamma's picture of man perfected, the Arahat. The 4 levels of teaching just discussed give us the key for sorting out the Dhammapada's diverse tenses on Buddhist doctrine and for discerning the intention behind its words of practical counsel. Laced with the verses specific to these 4 main levels. There runs throughout the work a large number of verses not tied to any single level but applicable to all alike. Taken together, these delineate for us the basic world view of early Buddhism. The most arresting feature of this view is its stress on process rather than persistence as the defining mark of actuality. The universe is in flux. A boundless river of incessant becoming, sweeping everything along, dust motes and mountains, gods and men and animals, world system after world system without number, all are engulfed by the irrepressible current. There is no creator of this process. No providential deity behind the scenes steering all things to some great and glorious end. The cosmos is beginningless, and in its movement from phase to phase it is governed only by the impersonal, implacable law of arising, change, and passing away. However, the focus of the Dhammapada is not on the outer cosmos, but on the human world, upon man with his yearning and his suffering, his immense complexity, his striving and movement towards transcendence. The starting point is the human condition, as given, and fundamental to the picture that emerges is the inescapable duality of human life, the Dichotomyes which taunt and challenge man at every turn, seeking happiness, afraid of pain, loss and death. Man walks the delicate balance between good and evil, righty and defilement, progress and decline. His actions are strung out between these moral antipodes, and because he cannot evade the necessity to choose, he must bear the full responsibility for his decisions. Man's moral freedom is a reason for both dread and jubilation. For by means of his choices he determines his own individual destiny, not only through one life, but through the numerous lives to be turned up by the rolling wheel of samsara. If he chooses wrongly he can sink to the lowest depths of degradation. If he chooses rightly, he can make himself worthy even of the age of the gods. The paths to all destinations branch out from the present, from the ineluctable immediate occasion of conscious choice and action. The recognition of duality extends beyond the limits of conditioned existence to include the antithetical poles of the conditioned and the unconditioned, samsara and nibbana, the near shore and the far shore. The Buddha appears in the world as the great liberator who shows man the way to break free from the one and arrive at the other, where alone true safety is to be found. But all he can do is indicate the path. The work of treading it lies in the hands of the disciple. The Dhammapada again and again sounds this challenge to human freedom. Man is the maker and master of himself, the protector or destroyer of himself, the savior of himself. 160, 165, 380. In the end he must choose between the way that leads back into the world, to the round of becoming, and the way that leads out of the world, to Nibbana. And though this last course is extremely difficult and demanding, the voice of the Buddha speaks words of assurance confirming that it can be done, that it lies within man's power to overcome all barriers and to triumph even over death itself. The pivotal role in achieving progress in all spheres, the Dhammapada declares, is played by the mind. In contrast to the Bible, which opens with an account of God's creation of the world, the Dhammapada begins with an unequivocal assertion that mind is the forerunner of all that we are, the maker of our character, the creator of our destiny. The entire discipline of the Buddha, from basic morality to the highest levels of meditation, hinges upon training the mind. A wrongly directed mind brings greater harm than any enemy. A rightly directed mind brings greater good than any other relative or friend. 42, 43. The mind is unruly, fickle, difficult to subdue, but by effort, mind, fullness and unflagging self-discipline, one can master its vagrant tendencies, escape the torrents of the scions and find an island which no flood can overwhelm. 25. The one who conquers himself, the victor over his own mind, achieves a conquest which can never be undone, a victory greater than that of the mightiest warriors. 103 to 105. What is needed most urgently to train and subdue the mind is a quality called heedfulness, AP, Pameda. Heedfulness combines critical self-awareness and unremitting energy in a process of keeping the mind under constant observation to detect and expel the defiling impulses whenever they seek an opportunity to surface. In a world where man has no savior but himself, and where the means to his deliverance lies in mental purification, heedfulness becomes the crucial factor for ensuring that the aspirant keeps to the straight path of training without deviating due to the seductive allurements of sense pleasures or the stagnating influences of laziness and complacency. Heedfulness, the Buddha declares, is the path to the deathless, heedlessness, the path to death. The wise, who understand this distinction abide in heedfulness, and experience nibbana, the incomparable freedom from bondage. 21 to 23.